Hi, everybody, and welcome to Friday Night Flock Talk. I'm Robin Sullivan of the Leather Elves. Back home in Maine, I just got back from the Seattle Tacoma area, and I brought the gray weather with me, but it's okay. I, had an amazing time out there. I want to thank everybody at Kiko's Parrots for being so welcoming. So the usual reminders to anybody that's new, or just if you need a reminder, because I know I do. You can like the Leather Elves on Facebook. That way you get notifications when we go live. Check our Facebook page for any surprise sales, pop-up events, things like that. You can follow us on Instagram, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. So a lot going on. Um, One reminder on the Rockstar Rescue Tour 2024. This Sunday is the last day to purchase boxes for the rescues, but this Sunday will be the last day for that. These are the sanctuaries and rescues that are participating. And I see that Nancy's on. Nancy, I've been calling you. I need to talk to you about a visit to Key West. So I'll give you a call maybe after the live stream. So anyway, I couldn't, I left and got home yesterday. I left the night before, and I was missing Jodie from Kiko so much that I had to have her on as a guest. So, hello.
Hi, everyone.
I was just there. It feels like
I
yesterday. Wait.
know,
So I
but
want
it's
to,
sunny and 78 here, so you should come back out.
I should. So I want to introduce everybody to Jodie. Anybody that doesn't know Jodie, I have known Jodie for 11 years, I think, maybe more than that. She is the co-owner of Kiko's Parrots. She's had a store under a different name, but since 2010, right? And Jodie is someone who is wonderfully passionate and about birds in her care, about the people that are in the avian community out there in Tacoma. And I witnessed that firsthand. So I want to thank you, Jodie, for making me a part of that community.
Thank you.
I also need to do a big shout out thank you to our three big auction bidders from last Friday night's live stream, who their bids go towards the Rockstar Tour, and that is Michelle and Trevor Zonfeld, Diane Hyde, and Julie Corwin. Thank you again, you guys. You have no idea the difference that makes in our ability to do this. I also lots of thanks. I need to thank Kiko's Parrots and Dallas Parrots for contributing to our fund as well. The banner on the bottom shows you all of our sponsors. We didn't get Kiko's or Dallas Parrots on there in time for the banner itself, but all of these companies are supporting the tour, and we want you guys to support them to say thank you from us. Okay, so all the commercials are done, I think. Um, so Jodie and I are going to talk about evacuations and emergencies, something that we don't like to think about, um, but unfortunately, we know too many people who have experienced the need for evacuation. And Jodie, you guys, so what made you go, okay, I need this, I need to have this, I need an evacuation plan?
Well, being in a store, I can have anywhere from 5 birds to 85 birds at one time. If I don't have a plan, everything goes just haywire. Um, Anybody with a store, anybody at home, you should have some kind of plan.
And one of the things I want to talk about is when might an evacuation be necessary? Um, so what kind of things, Jodie, do you say, okay, we need to evacuate?
There are things like wildfires. We deal with a lot of wildfires out here, or when the house behind the store is on fire. um, Hazmat spills, weather related incidents, extreme heat, extreme cold. Those of us in the Northwest, not a lot of us have air conditioning. So when it gets into the 90s, that becomes an issue for some of our people.
Yeah, I was talking to or messaging with Kathy Kazin down in Texas, and she was saying that it's, the extreme heat that they're experiencing right now, temperatures over 100. And I think, in some cases, yes, like in where you guys are, Jody, there isn't a lot of air conditioning. Where Kathy is, people have air conditioning, but it's still a concern. Um, what would you suggest to someone like Kathy who, okay, if she's not going to evacuate, what kind of measures can she take with extreme heat?
You can do cool misting with a spray bottle or put them in a cool shower and let them get completely wet. One of my favorite things to do is to give my birds ice cubes with food in it
Yeah.
because it'll help cool them off. Things like that.
And the other thing is too, doing like I talked to Carrie Ellen about this too, Carrie Ellen from Bird Gardens in Naples. And we were talking about like industrial fans, if you've got them and you're in a situation where you can use those. Even a small fan, if you're, in a home and you've got one or two birds, they still need that care. If your air conditioning goes out, because we know that happens, you may not have to
Industrial
evacuate.
fans,
And say that again, what?
industrial fans work amazing. I have them here and at home. For
I
extreme cold, if you lose heat, I always suggest to people if they can't get their bird somewhere to wrap three-quarters of the cage with a blanket and give them a warm corner. I'm not a fan of space heaters,
Yeah.
but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, we like up here in Maine, we went, I think it was 64 hours without any electricity before Christmas time at Christmas time. And if you've got a bird in the house and you're in Maine, you've got to keep them warm somehow. And I want to also say our birds are very resilient. We don't want to subject them to extreme heat or extreme cold, but as long as you take some of these measures, I think they're gonna be okay. I mean, what's your opinion, Jody?
Some of those measures, they're great. They are very resilient. I've witnessed that firsthand in store where we were without heat for a few days and we just kept certain doors shut and things. So they are very, very resilient. I think I came in here one day and it was 42 degrees in the store, and everybody was fine. Nobody got sick. Everybody was fine. We just take those kinds of measures. Yes, we used a lot of towels to wrap around cages, but it works.
Yeah, no, it definitely does, and it's about just thinking it through and, not panicking. That's one of the things we've always talked about is whatever the emergency, whether it's a medical emergency, a bird emergency, a, weather related, natural disaster related, being calm about the whole thing is really important,
Yes,
you know.
very important
Um,
because if you're not calm, your birds will feed off of that.
Absolutely. Michelle has a great idea. She said she used to keep a gallon of water in her freezer, and she would put it in front of a fan for extra cooling when that was needed. So
That's a really
that's a
good
good
idea.
idea. Thank you. Um, so, all right. So we've talked about, some of the things. When I was doing the flyer for this, I didn't put a tornado on the flyer. I didn't put a picture of a tornado because, most, not fire, but most natural disasters, you have some kind of notice. With tornadoes, that's really not always the case. Um, so Jody, if and I, poor Jody's looking at Jody and I did an outline on what we were going to talk about, and now I'm throwing questions at her that I didn't have here. But so in a situation, Jody, where you don't have a lot of time, um, what do you suggest to people? What steps can they take to be as safe as possible?
At a last minute, um, we work very quickly here. For those of you with larger flocks, it's a little more difficult. Um, with one or two, it's easier. I'm not going out in a tornado. I'm sorry. I'm going to take my bird into the bathroom. Um, we that is part of the plan. Why we have a plan. Each person does something different, It's all spelled out and written out um, in a book in my bird room and at home for my dogs and cats. And we practice that plan. We practice tetracine things into the cars, that whole thing. If you need to get your bird quickly, doesn't step up right away, it's okay to use a towel. It's okay to put them in a pillowcase
Yeah.
to be quick.
Absolutely. I think, we're going to go through like what should the plan include and those kind of things and why bother having a plan. And that I think for me, having a plan is part of staying calm. It's part of, how do you maintain that not panicked level. Adrian's in here from the sauna of South Central Arkansas. Yeah. So, I mean, we're all dealing with different shifting weather patterns are absolutely happening, and people are seeing things that they're not used to, that the birds are not used to. But I think we'll go through all the plan, what should be there, what you should have. But the bottom line for me, Jody, is you got to do what you got to do.
Yes.
You know,
Even if that
I mean,
means taking your bird's cage out and putting it in the back of your truck with your bird in it.
yeah, you,
I've seen it
and
happen.
that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if we could follow these plans to the letter. And I'll never forget years ago being at a parrot festival, and Dr. Walt Fry was there. And he was talking about his flock. He had a huge breeding flock, and he had, red vented cockatoos out in this amazing aviary with stumps, and it was beautiful. And somebody said, well, Dr. Walt, what do you do if if the tornado siren comes on and a tornado's headed your way? He's like, I open the doors and put out food. And it sounds, and I remember the gasps in the audience. People were horrified, but you do what you got to do, and
Yep.
you have to be safe too. And I was I was telling somebody, it was Carrie Allen, I think, the story today. Even if you have a plan, it doesn't always work. I was in Florida for an IAS conference, my first big bird event, and it was in Altamont Springs, Florida. And I couldn't afford to stay at the hotel, so I was staying at a Motel 6. And it came on the TV that there was a tornado warning in a certain county, and I had no idea was that the county I was in. And so I, you know, I called down to the desk and I said to the kid, "What am I supposed to do? Is this the county?" He goes, "Yep." I said, "Well, what am I supposed to do?" He says, "If the tornado comes this way," he says, "take the mattress, drag it into the bathroom, get in the tub, and put the mattress over you." So I'm like, "Okay, I got this." So I go into the bathroom. There was a shower stall. So even the best plans don't always work out. So yeah, Nick says here you
Correct.
may have to take it. What you never know. Um, Nick says you may have to take a large withdrawal from your trust account, having to move quickly to safety. You do, but I'd rather have a deficit in my trust account than not have my birds or not have my animals. Um, so yeah, absolutely. So, all right. A couple of things, not absolutely evacuation related, but emergency related. Yeah, Carrie said she was sending photos when the smoke rolled in and panic set in. She called the fire department and luckily got it put out quickly. So yeah, it's definitely, you act on the fly and something kicks in, I think, that helps you to do it efficiently. But there are some things that um I was talking to Carrie Ellen about today. Jody, do you have I know you have a folder, and that's part of like,
I do.
you know, um,
Yes.
but Carrie suggested, yeah, that's the folder. And Jody, can you tell everybody what's in there?
So this folder is just information on your flock. You should have one for every bird, or at least a piece of paper for every bird or animal. The bird's name, a picture if you can attach it, the species, how long you've owned it, and this picture that Nick just put up. It's a kennel card, and this is what we put on our cages, even in store. And when we have an evacuation, it has the bird name, the species, the age. That's information, owner information, address and phone number, diet, And all of that is in this folder as well. And that helps us because we're going to use this. If you evacuate to my store, we're going to use this to put that information on a card. Because, like Squeak here, he's a blue and gold macaw. I could have another blue and gold macaw come in named Squeak. I want to make sure that you're getting your right bird back.
That is
And then it
important.
helps us in an emergency.
So Jody, you mentioned if somebody comes to you in if in an evacuation, so your store accepts birds for boarding in case, like if you don't have to evacuate, but they do in another part of Washington. Um, so you do that. How does that work at your store?
So we do that. We're always watching, particularly this time of year, for the possibility of evacuation situations. We put it out there ahead of time so people can see it. They know that we're available. They come in with their bird during natural disaster, house fires, stuff like that. We do not charge for that boarding. That is something we give back to the community. Um, so we have all of that information. I use cages until they're empty, and then we use bigger dog crates or the crates that they're in.
Right. So, Nick, can you, I just need to go back here when we were talking about fires. Nick, can you put up those photos from Carrie Ellen? Carrie Ellen is down at Bird Gardens of Naples, and these are pictures of a wildfire, and you can see that it was across this is her gate where that person in yellow is standing. This is her gate. So the fire was that close. And she was explaining to me that the fire department told her, you have 15 minutes. And I can't guarantee you that the fire's not going to jump the road before that. So, I mean, this is a terrifying visual. But she was able to get all the birds off her property. In fact, when the fire department told her that you have 15 minutes to get your animals off the property, her response was, they're already gone. She had them in horse trailers ready to go. And the first, smell of smoke. I will tell you today, she smelled smoke. Smoke came rolling across her property. And it was somebody that had a fire that it got out of control. Didn't spread, but there was a lot of smoke. And she was ready. I mean, she knew and she called the fire department. So it's that being aware of what's going on around you and getting those alerts. Um, so how do you know? Because I know when I was out there, you said there was a fire. How did you know that?
So we've had a couple of occasions here where we've had to evacuate. We had a few years ago, we had really big wildfires. I have an amazing community out here. And the chief from one of the Indian tribes called me and said, precautionary, you need to go now. There was a fire that broke out down the hill from my store. Um, Earlier in the day, that day, I had carriers ready to go. They had food and water dishes in them. They had towels. They had whatever they needed. And we started putting those birds in those crates so that all we had to do was leave. We don't wait till the last minute, and that's probably the most important thing. If you know something's coming, you may not have to evacuate. Have your bird ready in that crate. So all you have to do is pick that up in your emergency tote and walk out the door.
And I think, Jody, that brings up a really good point. So, with the carrier, whether it's a cage or, this is an example. You put this together for me today, or yesterday. And this is an example of what you've got if you were going to take this bird, correct? So this is what you would be
Yes.
looking at? Okay.
Yes.
Um, so
And you see the cage tag is attached.
the cage tag
Excuse me.
before we saw before. And I think that's really important because honestly, in an emergency, again, I don't care how well prepared you are, things can go sideways really quickly. And you just have to, if a bird gets put somewhere and nobody besides you knows, and then you get separated out somehow. It's got that cage tag. But the with the carrier, I want to suggest to people, regardless of whether you're in a situation where you're going to have to evacuate, doing some training around in and out of a carrier, in and out of a crate is a great thing to do. I mean, Jody, do you guys work on that at all?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, the
Um,
bird pictured in that carrier is only a 6-month-old Senegal. So yes, we do that training.
Nice. And, it shouldn't be the bird shouldn't have the feet on on the edge of the crate fighting not to go in, or its wings out so it's not going in. This should be something that your bird's used to, that it's, oh, I'm getting in the crate. Oh, I'm going, we go out, we go do this, we go to the vet. The less stress you can create, or the less stressful a situation you can create, the better off you're going to be, especially in an evacuation, because this is stressful. I mean, the bird's going probably to a place it hasn't been before. Everybody's moving. It's not just hanging out in a cage or on a play stand. This is a big deal. And if you can lessen that stress by having the crate be easy breezy, I think that's really important. Um,
Right. And for
so,
those of us with large flocks, if you get stuck in a situation where you have to go now and you had no idea it was coming, don't worry about that crate. Put your bird in pillowcase.
yeah,
If it's your own house that's on fire, God forbid, you can hand that pillowcase out the window to somebody. And don't worry about the crate. Wherever you're going is probably going to have one.
yeah, yeah,
So some because with larger flocks, because I can carry 10 pillowcases faster than I can carry 2 crates.
yeah. Yeah, and it sounds harsh, but again, I'd rather have my bird out of that dangerous situation than, um, stuck in an emergency. So, all right, so let's go back to the plan. You know me, I always have to have a plan. My husband, I'm sure Mark is listening now going, "Yeah, she does. She always has to have a plan." But how about, where do you evacuate to, Jody? Do you have a location that's set? It's not just like we're going to load everybody up and go wherever we can. What's the deal with that?
So we have, I have a location. Thankfully, I live about a mile from the store. And then I also have a backup or an overflow. My employee also lives about a mile from the store. So we have a plan, a backup, and a backup.
I know,
We
that's
also
so
have a
important.
plan
Go ahead.
that we're on the phone calling our people that help us with transportation. I don't know if my wife is watching, but all I have to say is evac and she's here,
Yep.
um, loading birds. Once a car is full, we want them to go to that point. We don't want them to hang around and risk any further injury to them or the birds they have. And we have a
Yeah.
meeting place.
I mean, and I think that's important, that it's not, we have to get everybody out and then everybody's going to go together. You get them out when a car is full, when, one person has all they can handle, that's when they go. That's really important, Jody. Thank you for mentioning that.
Well,
So
we had a
Michelle,
situation. Go ahead.
go ahead. No, you
We
go.
had a situation not long ago. There's a house right behind my store, and it sits about a foot from my bird room or my old bird room. And my employee was driving home from somewhere and called me and said, the house behind the store is on fire. The fire department was not going to let us in the store. At that time I had 85 birds. It took 3 of us 7 minutes to evacuate. Which is helpful because now the fire department knows that I can get them out and they'll let me in.
Mhm. And that, and Nick says, this is why it's important to have a good relationship with your local bird store. That Amazon isn't going to be there to shelter your bird. And that's so true, Nick. It really is. So, all right, we've got the backup we've got the location, which is important. Everyone, and this is, it's the same thing I say when people talk about who they're going to leave their birds to, or who's going to take their birds when something happens to them. Make sure that person knows, because Sometimes it's, "Oh, yeah, he'll take them. Oh, yeah, I can go there." And then, "Oh, no, you can't." And the other thing is, with a community like
And
yours, Jody, we've got I mean, there's a chance that a lot of your community members are going to be going through the same thing. So having that backup is really important.
the last time we went through it with the wildfires, we were in the midst of evacuating when a customer showed up with all of her birds in cages in the back of her truck. And no, I did no judgment at all. She did what she had to do. I'm going to say one other thing for those of us that have more than one bird. You should have a carrier for every bird in your home.
Mhm.
I hear it all the
Yeah.
time. Well, I don't ever take them together anywhere. You should have a carrier for every bird in your home.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and even then, like Michelle said that they had to evacuate and Shadow wouldn't get into the crate. And the place where she lives told her that she had to leave him and go. And it's really difficult. And Shadow wants to sleep in his carrier now. So clearly Shadow learned his lesson. But still a very stressful situation. And if you live in if you're in a house fire, the fire department 9 times out of 10 is going to tell you you have to leave. And it's not that they don't care about your pets, but they care about you more. That's their first, mission, is to make sure human life is taken care of. So, you know, eh, the whole like, oh, I didn't think about it. Oh, I didn't know. I'll go back in. You can't. It's definitely not.
No.
Um, and then Adrienne brings up a good point. She says, for wildfires, earthquakes, flooding, it's important that everyone in your home or facility knows one primary meeting location and one secondary. And also be aware that cell towers may be out of commission. So if you have access to ham operations, that's useful. But I think that's a really good message, Adrienne, is that everyone who's helping you, because I know, Jody, like I said, you have an incredible community out there, but everyone that's
We did.
helping needs to know where they're going.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, there
So
was a little delay there.
no worries. Hey, it's the technology is a joy except when it isn't. So we've got the bird, we talked about what goes in your bird facts. Nick, can you put that card up again? The one that goes on the carrier? Because I really like this joke. So that the card there, that it has all of the information that you need, and it including the veterinarian, because this may be a situation where that bird's going to need treatment after evacuation. Jody, when you created this, you use these anyway, but when you created this, um, why were these things important to have on there? The different parts that are on here.
Um, well, your vet, I need to be able to contact your vet if your bird does need veterinarian care, if I can use your vet. I need to know how to get a hold of you in case there's an injury to your bird. And with the dietary stuff that's on there, if your bird is allergic to something, if you absolutely don't want them to have seed, sometimes not necessarily in my store, but sometimes stores feed seed. You want all of that information on there so that we can take care of your bird the best we can.
Janice says perhaps specify what pellet. Yeah, that's important. That can be important, Janice. And I think so. I'm going to put my plug in here that everybody gets mad at me about, that's feeding fresh, but I want your birds to know what a pellet is. Just because in a situation like this, you evacuate, it's a longer than just a couple hours that you're evacuated, and something like this needs to come with you, because
Yes.
and your bird needs to understand that it's a food source. Because what happens when, like here in Maine, we were without power for 60 some hours. The grocery stores threw out all the fresh. They threw out, all the frozen, all the fresh stuff. You couldn't get a vegetable if your life depended on it during those 64 hours. Well, that's quite a long time if that's all your bird knows as food. So Jody, you take like a generic, how do you handle the food situation if you have to evacuate?
So if I have to evacuate my emergency totes, in addition to towels and pillowcases and food and water dishes, I have food in there. I have food that my birds are used to, store birds are used to, because even if I have to take them to another store, that store may not feed what I feed,
Right.
which is okay. My birds know an array of food, but not everybody feeds the same. Not every store will have it. So I always have a bag of food in that emergency tote that goes with us, and I check it every 3 months to make sure it hasn't expired.
So, yeah, I mean, that's important too. If you have the time, if it's not just I got to get the birds out and I have a very, very, very limited time, but if you have a couple of extra minutes, you've got that emergency tote. So, Jody, so there's food and water in there. What else is in your like in pillowcases and towels? What else goes in there?
And then I have a first aid kit in there.
Okay.
It has it has your scissors, your styptic powder. It also does include a human first aid kit inside of that. Um, and I still have the one from the Leather Elves. This is the one that I pick up and I take it with me.
Mhm.
This is where all my bird files go into. Um, Again, we have a situation here where I have people. One person gets the files, one person grabs the totes. The totes are the first thing to go in somebody's car because that's the
Mhm.
bird's lifeline. That has the food. It has. Um, I know I'm missing some things out of the emergency kit. Um,
So, well, with the emergency kit, we've got when we designed it, and it was it's an over the shoulder bag. And when we designed it, it was meant to be hung by the door with, styptic powder, gauze, hemostat, scissors, popsicle sticks in case you had to stabilize something. What else was in there? There were pellets in there.
yep,
There was uh,
that wrap.
Pedialyte, which is in question now whether that's what you should be giving them, but vet wrap, all of those things are in there. And the thing about your emergency go bag and your kit, like if you're at home, I mean, Jody's got a huge tub that's got to go. If you're talking about one or two birds, grab a tote bag. Come on, we all go to these conferences and we get these tote bags. We can do stuff with them. If you're not going to, purchase a pre-made kit, put it together for yourself. The word of caution is hopefully you don't have to use it. Hopefully it just sits there on the hook by the door. But if it just sits there on the hook by the door and you've got things in it like pellets or Pedialyte or Neosport, the triple antibiotic cream, if you've got any of those things in there, check the expiration date. You don't want to have an emergency, grab the bag, get to where you're going and need something in there and have it be expired. Jody, do
And
you kind of check up?
if your bird's on any kind of medication, that should be put in that bag. That's
Yeah.
another thing that's on that card, whether or not they have medication. We I always tell people have your I'm sorry, my phone keeps ringing. I'm in
You're
my office.
popular.
I am. Um, we keep so in store we have a rack where all of our crates are. Keep your keep keep your crates um by your cages,
Judy,
your emergency kits, your I've now taken the phone off the hook. I'm sorry. Um have everything close in hand. You don't want to run into your garage and dig through stuff to find that crate. You don't have time.
yeah.
If you can keep everything at least where you can easily get to it, I always say, and going back to that cage tag, you should have something on your crates already.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's something you can
Um,
do right
and
now.
if you've got multiple birds and multiple crates, and we talked about, seeing if you get them crate trained. Well, if you've got multiple crates, don't get all hung up on, well, this is Fred's crate and this is Susie's crate, and Fred only knows
Mm-mm,
how to go into Fred's crate. So it's kind of so when I was at Jodie's store on Tuesday, she was working and I was kind of like, hanging out. And so I picked up a target stick and I started working with some of the birds because it was fun. And I, thought it might be something good to do. And doing training with your birds doesn't have to be, oh, I taught him to do this trick, or I taught him. You can work with a bird on how to go into a crate. And if you've got multiple birds and multiple crates, have them going into different ones. So it doesn't matter which crate you put in front of them, they are going to go in it. I know Squeak, Jody, crates right from his
Yeah,
cage, right? Can you tell people
he
about that?
does. Squeak. Yeah, Squeak is trained. Squeak is 24 years old. He is trained. If I put his carrier in front of the door, which is a tall acrylic, open his cage door, he climbs right in, all by himself, which is really good because he's also a previous breeder. So sometimes he's not super friendly. So he'll
Yes.
just climb right in that crate himself. He got so used to coming and going, doing events that, oh, it's time to go. We're going to go have fun. So for him, it's not stressful at all.
Yeah. And that's the key. Yeah, Michelle says her parents used to drive her crazy when they would evacuate for fires and they would have to run into the garage to get the crates. Yeah, it's that shouldn't be a part of it. It should be, during the season. Okay, so all of our friends down in Florida, it's hurricane season. It started June 1st. I'm sorry. You've got to be aware that there's a possibility you may have to evacuate. I can guarantee you that Carrie Ellen has all of her evacuation stuff ready, because it is fire and hurricane season. So, you've got to think about that and have it together. And if, you're like, well, I can't put it all, out, whatever, have it in a very simple location where you're not digging through anything. You don't have to, toss the other boxes aside before you find those carriers. Um, and Jody, so in your store, when you have people come in, if it's not an emergency, they come in for boarding. Do you ask them? They leave their carrier. How do you handle that?
They do leave their carrier. We require them to, though we don't want to have to deal with an emergency. But if we have one, they have their own crate. I have one for every bird in store.
Okay.
But I may not necessarily have enough for yours. So I do ask that crates are left. Um, it just makes it easier. They're in something they're used to. Um, yeah, so we keep them right by the cage.
Well, and crate training is actually kind of a fun training to do because you can make it so you can add the cute twist to it, right? If you get your bird who's coming in and out of a carrier and it's got one of those swinging doors on the front, you can actually
Yep,
train your bird to close the door. They're not going to be able to latch it, but there are birds that I've worked with that will go into their crate and shut the door behind themselves. And it's super cute, and you can show your friends, and and it's productive in case you ever have to be in this kind of situation. So,
right.
tell me what it looks like when you execute this plan, Jody, because I know you have the plan. I know that your employee is trained on this. What is it? So I call you and go, Jody, I heard there was a fire on Waller Road and it's moving your way. What happens then?
If it's on Waller Road, I'm already too late. I got to get out quicker. There is absolutely no question. We all, again, evacuate is all that needs to be said. And we just start getting birds and putting them in cars. Um, we know that there is a delay time for some of our help to get here. We are very blessed in the Northwest to have Flight Club Foundations help with this as well. They are
Nice.
always on standby for stuff like that. And we just do it. We don't scream at each other. We don't yell at the birds. We just know. And the reason we know that is because 4 times a year I run a drill.
Nice.
Sometimes it's a
Nice.
planned drill, and sometimes I walk in and say, okay, we have to evacuate now so that we have practice both ways.
Jennifer,
There has been
Jennifer. I
occasion
never
where I've
call her
taken a
that.
cage outside the door. Oh, my
Sorry,
wife
Jen
just said
says
it
it
looks
looks
like a
like a well-oiled
name.
machine.
Thank you.
Yep. I read Jennifer and I'm like, I never call her Jennifer. It's Jen. Um, you know, I think one of the things, Jody, that's important is that drill. Okay. And your family, if you are living at home, you've got your home and you're living with other people, and you're asking them to do this, you're going to get probably going to get a little bit of blowback, but
Yep.
it's worth it. I mean, I can tell you when we had a fire in our workshop last February, a year ago, February, um, I broke the cardinal rule and I went back in for the cat. Um, and there wasn't a plan. There wasn't, and it, unfortunately, you don't think in those terms, but you have to. I mean,
Mm.
I don't know. So once you get all, the birds are going and they go. So what does it look? Do you have a plan, Jody? If is it based on like, okay, it's going to be a day, they're going to be gone. It's going to be a week. What does that look like?
So for me at home, I have extra cages, I have extra crates, and I always have bird food at home. In the event that I've got to go further than my home, my backup plan that also goes. We never know out here in the Northwest how long that evacuation is going to be, whether it's a day, overnight. I guess taking the phone off the hook doesn't help. I'm so sorry.
It's
Um,
okay.
we don't really. So it, the amount of food in my bins that I keep is always dependent on how many I have in store.
Mhm.
And I have two
Okay.
different kinds, large bird and small bird. Um, one of the reasons I practice so much is so that when we really do have to evacuate, it's almost like we're practicing. We're just, we're one row at a time of birds. Um,
Yeah.
and you've seen my bird room and how that is set up. So yes, it's stressful, but at the same time, I can see that okay, this bird's okay, this bird's stressed. Um, Jennifer loves it because we end up setting up tables in our house and we have bird crates on them. If I've had to evacuate in pillowcase, then that's when bird goes into the crate, perch, food, water, maybe a toy. I am not super worried about a toy during evacuation.
No.
Um, they'll be okay without a toy for a few days.
Mhm.
Um, we have the extra bedroom, so we set tables up. We set tables up in store the same way if we know there the possibility of a bunch of people coming.
And I think too, it's if you have to evacuate your home, and you have your plan, okay, I'm going to go to this person's house or whatever. No, you kind of have to be aware too that if God forbid your house burns down, you're not going to be back in your home for a while. Even smoke damage is tough and it lasts. Cleaning that up can take a while. So I would suggest to people too, having that second step plan that, okay, I've got the evacuation done. I've done what I said on my plan or what I hope to do. Um, now what do I do? Because, our friends love us, but they may not love our birds. I know they shouldn't be our friends, but, um, there needs to be a plan. Like, okay, I'm gonna take, I know I can take it to, if I don't know if Karen Anderson's on tonight, but maybe someplace like Avian Suites, a boarding facility where or a store like Jodie's where you can take them, and that they'll be safe there too, because you don't want to, rely on the kindness of friends for extended periods of time. I just think that's not really fair. Um, yeah, Nick said it's another reason why bird clubs are important. Get to know your fellow bird members. They might be able to help you in a shelter situation. So true. And like Jody said,
Yeah.
Flight Club is out there and you work with them if you have to, right, Jody? Not if, well, I mean, if an evacuation
We
requires
enjoy working
assistance.
them. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Karen is there. So, someplace like that's the other piece of this. So you've got your plan, you've trained your birds, you've got, what you need, when you're going to evacuate, what requires evacuation. What happens then when it's extended? Do your research ahead of time so you're not going to, you know, Joe's Joe's bird store or Joe's boarding facility, not knowing what you're getting into. You need to find somewhere like Avian Suites in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, where you've researched, they do a good job, or somewhere like Jodie's store where that they're doing the right thing. But make sure you've got that backup if you need it. Oh, San Francisco Bird Hotel. I forgot about them, Nick. Another
Yep.
amazing facility. So they're out there, I mean, there are definitely places out there for you to go. It's just knowing what's in your area that's important. So, Jodie, um, so you said you have people are assigned what part of the plan they're doing.
Yes.
How does that usually go?
Way ahead of time.
Okay.
Um, that's done way ahead of time. When my volunteers come in, once they get here, they know what their part is. Their doors to their vehicles are open before they come in the door, kind of thing. We just don't have to say, "Hey, did you get?" Because we know that everything is there. Because it's impossible for two of us to get birds and all records and totes and so everybody has a specific thing they have to do, a
Mhm.
specific person they need to call or whatever.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that again, we reiterate that everyone is aware of the plan, because this is not a place for power struggle. This is not a place for I can do this. The egos get put away in a situation like this, and it's you have a very specific task to do. And if for you guys who are listening, if you're involved in a situation that requires an evacuation, someone has asked you, please help with this, put the ego aside when you walk in, because you're a hero just because you're there. So put the ego aside, and there should be one person who is in charge. Um, one person who's calling the shots, who is the manager, if you will. And I think that's super important. What do you think, Jody?
That is very important. We it doesn't matter to me that I own the store and that I'm the boss. It's whoever gets what done. That's what I
Yeah.
need. I don't need my manager pulling that either. It's always, I've had some great mentors over the last years that have taught me really well, um, that helped me make it a well oiled machine.
Mhm.
My veterinarian, as soon as we leave the store, my veterinarian is um, on standby in case I need them. Um, Really important that you can do that, um, so that with a store, your veterinarian knows what's going on, that you may need them, and they're on standby. I have an amazing veterinarian, by the way.
I was gonna say, you definitely do. I got to meet your veterinarian, and she's gonna be my guest in 2 weeks, so you guys
Yes,
will
she
all get to meet
is.
Jody's veterinarian. Yeah, Carrie Ellen says here, the last fire, her birds were off property for 10 days. It took o over a
Mhm.
week for the fire to be put out and clear the smoke, and I think that's another important piece, Jody. How do you assess that, okay, it's safe to come back? What kind of things should people be looking for when that happens?
So I make sure that I don't have a fire within 5 miles of my store. We can't always do anything about the smoke except limit the doors closed. My bird room is towards the back, so that outside door is never opened. On
Mhm.
that side, we'll do things like put towels in because no other store is going to take 85 birds for a long period of time. Um, so we utilize things like the vet, and my lungs will tell me if there's a problem quicker than anything.
Yeah.
We have evacuated just because the smoke's been so bad. As
Mhm.
I'm staring out at Mount Rainier, because Mount Rainier is the backyard to my office, and that is a volcano. So I come in, is it bearable? Is there a fire within 5 miles? If I needed to, can I get them back out quickly?
Mhm.
Um, for me, that's always a yes. But so far, anyways, knock on wood. If you don't, if you aren't comfortable, don't take your birds back.
Mhm. Yeah.
Talk to the store
It
or whoever you are leaving them with And I saw that Carrie Ellen, the 10 days, we've had birds evac for during landslides that were here for 90 days because, I mean, things happen, which is why we don't ever turn them away. We don't ever charge for that. Um, and then they're allowed to come in and see their animals as well. For me
Yeah.
to evacuate, there has to, when I come back, it has to be completely safe because of the amount of birds I'm dealing with.
Yeah, and so it's not just about the evacuation, it's about I mean, obviously, that's the
When is it
most
safe?
critical part. Hmm?
It's when is it safe to return?
Yeah, and, being honest about that, not, "Oh, it's kinda smoky," or, "It's a little wet," or, "It's still blowing out there, but I think the storm is getting better." It's not about that. It's about when is it completely safe for them to come back, because you don't wanna take that chance. Um,
No.
and you said transportation, your volunteers bring the transportation for them, so that's taken care
Yes.
of. And then Carrie Ellen has the bus, she reminded me of the bus. That's why she has it, so that she can get the birds off the property if she needs to.
Mhm.
She said they've had birds come there for over a year, because of Hurricane Ian, and so many lost their homes, and so they were able to let birds stay at the bird gardens. And I think that's, if you're lucky enough to be somewhere where you have that situation, that's amazing. If not, you figure out the workaround and you just, as long as it's safe, that's when you return. And so you mentioned your veterinarian, Jody. If you evacuate, so there's whatever, a hazmat spill, a weather-related incident, fires, and you evacuate. What's I mean, do you do kind of like a overall check and decide whether any of those need vet attention, any of those birds? How do you handle that situation?
Um, well, if there's a smoke thing, if there's a fire, we absolutely um, ask our vet to come in and do at least a general listen to the lungs evaluation of each bird. If it's hazmat, I do what I can to keep crates covered so that the birds aren't with towels so that they're not. I do watch, make sure nobody's lethargic, make sure they're all eating, drinking, going to the bathroom. Um, my vet being as amazing as she is, I can meet her or she can meet me. She comes right in the store for us a lot of times. So that's what I'm looking at. If a bird in the process of evacuation, trying to get in the crate or the pillowcase is injured, I absolutely call the vet in immediately.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that's important because, you mentioned if it's hazmat or if it's a smoke situation. We had Danny on and we talked about their respiratory systems, and it's very different. What may seem like, oh, it's just a little smoky to you, not you necessarily, Jody, because I know you have some breathing issues, but to the average person, if oh, it's just a little smoky, that is significantly worse for our birds. You know, it's not like, "Oh, it wasn't bad. It wasn't that bad." Any kind of smoke inhalation, should probably be checked out, by a veterinarian. So just better safe than sorry. I
Absolutely.
mean, that's kind of the rule of thumb. So does anybody have I mean, we've covered a lot. I love the way Jody and her staff do the evacuation. Does anybody have questions, as far as, what you would do, what you could do, or any specific situations that you have questions about? Just, let me know in the chat. Um, and let's hope that you don't have to do this. I would love it if you could all say, that live stream was really useless because I never had to evacuate. But
Right.
we kind of know that that's not necessarily gonna happen. And I think if you know anybody that's in a place where, wildfires are prevalent or, floods or I mean, you name it, natural disaster or, human-made disaster, if you know of somebody that was that's in a situation like that or a setting like that, please, and you think this was valuable, please share this live stream with them so that they'll be prepared too. One other thing I don't think we mentioned, it's not always neighborhood wide. Sometimes it's an emergency at your home and you're not always there. So something I suggest, find a neighbor that you trust, and give them a key, because it may be, oh my gosh, this is going on at your house and you're at work. So, and have the neighbor understand what what the evacuation looks like. Have it written down. I mean, Jodie, have you ever had anybody come in and said, like, this happened while I was at work? And
Mhm.
I wish
Yes.
somebody had known. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that, I think
Can't
that's
tell
really
you how many
important.
people have keys to my house and my store for that reason.
I could say so much here, Jodie, but I won't. Um, Jodie's super friendly. No, I'm teasing, but I want to
No, they're all
thank you,
people I
Jodie.
trust.
They're what?
They're all people I trust.
Yeah, no, it's true. But if nobody's got any questions, I'm not seeing any here on the comments. Um, I want to thank you, Jodie, and thank your staff for being so well trained. And oh, oh, okay. So Nick just made a point that I was old. He said they have codes on their doors. So,
Yeah.
those of us who live in houses that were built in 1900, we don't have codes, we have keys.
No.
But if you're fancy like Nick, you have a code on your door. So Nick, give your code to someone that you trust, and we'll go from there. Thank you, Jen, for listening, and I want to thank everybody that's on. And hopefully, again, you'll never have to use this. Um, just a couple things, and Jodie, thank you. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you for having
sharing.
me.
And if you're in the Pacific Northwest, you need to. Carrie Ellen doesn't have keys or code, so you can just go down to Bird Gardens in Naples and take anything you want. So,
On my
if
way.
you've got any, all right, Jodie's on her way, Carrie. So if you have anybody that you want to hear from in the bird community, I'm not going to guarantee it, but send me a message. Say, hey, could you talk about this? Hey, could you have this person on? Whatever. Next week, I'm going to be talking about DIY and safety. There's a push on DIY stuff. And so we're going to be talking about that, how to make some of your own stuff, but how to make sure it's safe. So join us and bring your creative side. One last plug for the Rockstar Tour. We've got t-shirts on sale. Anybody who is in the know or who is anybody will have one of these t-shirts. I know Jodie has ordered one, I believe. I know Carrie has. They are available through Custom Ink. You go on there and it's the Rockstar Rescue Tour 2024. And when you buy a shirt, you'll get it sent to you. It's going to be shipped. I believe it's that they're on sale till June 18th. They're supposed to get to you by like the 5th of July. The tour starts on the 11th. Carrie Ellen and I are going to hit the road on July 11th, and we would love to see you while we're on the road and see you in your Rockstar Rescue Tour t-shirt. So, all right.
And
Thank
get your
you again,
boxes
Jodie,
before the 9th.
and get your boxes before the 9th. So it's a good thing I have that little voice that's called Nick. I appreciate everything that Nick does for us. So you guys take care. Thank you again, Jodie, and we will see
Thank
you
you.
guys next week. Have a good week. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye bye.